This is Crickley Hill. Its name means no more than hill pasture, 9 acres of rough grazing. But during 4,000 years of prehistory, it saw 30 phases of settlement and worship, always marked by violence and destruction. Why did man return here, time after time?
The story begins about 6,000 years ago with the arrival of the first farmers, bringing with them the ancestors of the crops and the cattle that feed us still today. Cattle, pigs, sheep, wheat and barley. The people who had used the hill before will have been hunters and gatherers only. The western end of the hill tapers to a point and a path down to the vale and probably to the lowest point at which the Severn could be crossed in prehistory. And it may be that that's a clue to the hill's long series of reuses. Along with agriculture, the first farmers brought with them 2 new technologies. One was that of the polished stone tool, the axe or the adze, for fine woodworking, possibly also for tree felling. This one, which is from Crickley, is an adze. It has a slightly curved edge there, and that will have been for shaping wood for building. They brought with them, too, the technology of pottery. Simple pots, but from now on, the archaeologist's chief guide to the relationship between cultures and changes in culture. Let's go and look and see if we can say something about the way the first farmers lived. This is the entrance of the first Neolithic village, built about 3,500 BC and fortified with a rock-cut ditch whose stone was used to build a wall supporting a wooden palisade. The rock was cut and dug entirely with antler picks. It's difficult to do it now, even with steel pickaxes. The amount of labour involved must have been enormous. There are 3 entrances to this village to the east. They converge in the end on a little group of houses in the centre. One house, in fact, is just behind me here in the natural sheltered hollow. A road leads to the west from the centre of the village down to the point of the hill and so on to the vale and probably to the lowest Severn crossing. The village did suffer some attacks. There are arrowheads in amongst its defences. But it was never destroyed in an attack. It was abandoned. And about 2,500 BC, another village was built on the site. And that's the village whose bank is visible now. In fact, it stands over the ditch of the first village. It has a stronger ditch in front of it in its turn, and it seems to have been built with a genuine military purpose. Still, the work was done with the antler picks. It had a dramatic end. About 2000 BC, it was attacked by bowmen. We shall never know how many, but one might make a guess that it was 20 or 40, who saturated it with the shooting of flint-tipped arrows. The sort of weapons they were using were not very different from this modern bow. In turn, not so very different from the long bows of Cressy and Agincourt. Efficient, very powerful weapons. And in the Neolithic, they were used to shoot arrows which were tipped with flint which is as fragile as glass and as sharp as flake glass. Very efficient weapons, penetrating flesh better than steel does and breaking off more easily in the wound. Neolithic surgery would be no pleasure, and we know they practiced it in other contexts. The fight, the arrows, seemed to have been the end of the village. It was burnt, and the hill was not reoccupied again permanently until the beginning of the Iron Age. Meanwhile, it was a site of tremendous religious importance.